just this morning, a 92-year-old man, Ryland Headley, has this morning been jailed for life for the rape and murder of 75-year-old woman Louisa Dunn. This is a crime he committed 58 years ago. Headley was only caught after police reopened the case in 2023 and found his DNA on the victim's skirt. Headley's sentencing has sparked a debate now about our ever-ageing prison population, with some suggesting that very elderly prisoners should be released early or perhaps be given softer sentences as they pose a lesser danger to society. Or do they, Jane? You know?
Well, if you do the crime, you do the time, in my opinion, and that is very much a crime. I mean, obviously, the case that they're talking about here in particular is that when you have people who are much older going into prison, then does it suddenly become their care home?
Yeah.
And I would argue that actually, if you're in prison, you probably get better access to care than if you're actually on the outside living a blameless life. But, you know, so, yeah, it's about prison cells that have to be, you know, repurposed for one person because the beds have to be wider, the equipment, etc., etc. But it's kind of like, where do you go statistically with this? Because it's not like it's full of nonagenarians. But I think in terms of the last time data was collected, so September 2023, there were actually only 426 people aged 80 or over in prison in the UK. And not necessarily all of those over 80 would have necessarily care needs. But no, I don't think that this man in particular, if, you know, obviously it's taken them a very long time to nail him for this crime, but absolutely he
And it was
has
a brutal crime.
Yeah.
And she was found beaten, her face beaten, and it was absolutely dreadful. But we do have a problem, Janet, with overcrowding in prisons.
Yeah, we have
I saw a report about this very issue where it was the prison warders saying, look, we're not carers, you know, we're prison warders, and we're now having to provide care for a lot of these elderly prisoners that have very specific needs, some maybe even possibly dementia, and they're having to bring in carers, outside carers, into prison. So is there a case for, look, they've done possibly most of their time or a lot of their time, is it time to move them on? Because our prisons are overcrowded and we haven't got room to take younger prisoners.
But if they've committed a violent crime, I honestly don't think that they should be released early, because that sends the wrong message. And also, taking into account advances in DNA and scientific research, there will be more cases along the way over the next few years. You can rest assured there'll be more cold cases that will be opened up.
Absolutely.
And there will be more rapists, murderers and brutal, mostly men who've lived scot-free.
So what do you do? Maybe create kind of prisoner
like
care
a Broadmoor
homes?
situation. I mean, you know, Broadmoor is a sort of hospital type for those with, you know, severe mental illness. Maybe something like that, where they don't deserve just to go home if they've murdered and raped someone just because they're 95. Yeah. Obviously, people are living longer, and I understand from as you said, from the workers in the prison, they're not equipped to deal with that. But as regards releasing them early, if they have committed a violent crime like that, like the girls have said, absolutely no way.
What I don't understand is why it's taken this long, because obviously when the murder happened, DNA technology wasn't available, but they thought it might be in the future, so they sort of stored the evidence, if you like. But you then like to think, when you watch all these cop shows, which you love, Denise...
The Crime Minister.
...that it would be put into a computer system. Now, in 2012, this man came into police custody for something that he actually wasn't charged with in the end, but they uploaded his DNA in 2012. And it's now 13 years later that finally the connection has been made because somebody's picked up that cold case.
I think I can answer that. I think that what's happened is that the way the police use computer systems, and I know about this because I've got a friend who's very high up in all of this, the way that the police are going through old evidence and old cold cases, and the way they're putting DNA and all this information together using new technology is increasing at pace. So it's what I said earlier. I think the police force have moved into the 21st century and are we will see more prosecutions.
And again, it's about us investing in
in
a
technology.
proper computer system for them.
And also the families keeping the case alive. Sometimes it's down to these families who
and also
insist
for
that the
families
case
to get
is
justice,
reopened.
however long it's taken.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw this woman's granddaughter saying, you know, my mother didn't live to see her mother get justice, and it was the most brutal, absolutely brutal rape and killing. So